Good afternoon, friends. We hope you had a great weekend and welcome back to the Ora News broadcast for our daily English news edition. I'm Daniel Cook, your host, presenting a translated version of today's top news stories. The Prosecutor General Adriatic Lala has expressed concern about the lack of consultation during the preparation of the justice reform. During a meeting with the city prosecutors and the Minister of Justice, the chief prosecutor had this to say: "The judicial system needs to be reformatted. There are corrupt prosecutors among us. 2 were arrested only a few weeks ago. Any prosecutors who abuse their duty or do not follow the prosecutor's code of ethics will be removed. In our opinion, conclusions have been reached hastily and without consulting all the actors who work every day in the justice system. The Venice Commission has reached almost the same conclusion, that the draft was not at the level of quality expected," declared Mr. Lala. Minister Magnani supported the idea that the prosecutors should be consulted. He said that the prosecutors are the real connoisseurs of the problems in the justice system and that their opinion is of great value. Minister Magnani praised the achievements of the prosecution so far and supported the idea that the role of the prosecutor in the criminal investigations needs to be strengthened. The leader of the Democratic Party Experts for the Judicial Reform says that the Venice Commission has supported 70% of their recommendations. Alibeaj made the following statement today: "70% of the recommendations of the Venice Commission are based on our opinion. The opinion of the Venice Commission, at the same time, is advice on how the project amendments need to be written in the future. The Commission did not support the idea of adding new constitutional bodies. There should not be so many institutions related to justice because they create a new reality that is unrecognized and untested for the Albanians. This is risky because a lack of cooperation between these institutions would not consolidate the justice system," declared Alibeaj. After the harsh debates in the last plenary session over the medals that were awarded to former communist prosecutors, the Socialist and Democratic parties have submitted 2 different initiatives to Parliament to avoid this happening again. Prime Minister Rama and the Socialist MP Talant Bala have proposed a number of changes to the current law, which will retract the medals given to people who cooperated with the State Security Service. The draft also includes the establishment of a commission that will deal with the restriction of medals. Meanwhile, the Democratic MPs presented their own initiative, also demanding that the medals be restricted. The resolutions and the amendments will be reviewed in the next plenary session in January. The opposition protested outside the parliament today, once again advocating the removal of the government. This was their final protest of this year, but they have plans to make a return in January. Today's protest was headed by the youth, who demanded the removal of the government that they believe is destroying the country. The Democratic youth, supported by the citizens and the Democratic MPs, protested for about 3 hours outside the parliament, while the plenary session was being held within. The head of the Democratic Youth Forum repeated that they will not stop until the government of Rama and Meta is removed. He said, "Today we have a government that promised us reduced energy prices, but in reality they have increased the price. The government promised us tax reduction, but really they have increased taxes for 95% of the citizens. They have not built any new roads. We have a government that is driving the youth out of the country. Now the students do not even have the chance to study because of the new law on higher education. This government does not promote values, but anti-values. We are here to stop Eddie Rama. Removing Rama is the only way to save the country," he said. The Democratic chairman Lulzim Basha also addressed the protesters, saying that they will rally again in January and will continue until the government is removed from power. "Today you showed the Albanians that this government has fallen," he said. "You spoke openly, as only the youth can speak. The Democratic Party has been and continues to be against the law on higher education. I promise you that we will repeal this law on the very first day that we take power. The Albanian youth deserves to be educated, and with the Democratic Party in power, they will be educated without discrimination and with low tuition fees. On January 4th, we will begin our most active campaign against corruption. We will stop corruption, and together we will establish a new standard, the standard of transparency," said Mr. Basha. The Ombudsman Igli Totozani has sent a recommendation to all the mayors and the Minister of Urban Development. The Ombudsman requests that they take measures to shelter the needy with the aim of preventing situations that may risk their lives or health. In the recommendation, Totozani expresses that the Ombudsman has continuously been attentive to providing shelter, not only as a duty contained in the Constitution and the international acts ratified by Albania, but also as a fundamental human right. Currently, there are several legal dispositions that regulate this objective, but the Ombudsman says that in reality, shelter is one of the most concerning social issues. He made the following statement. Referring to the number of complaints that have been presented to the institution of the Ombudsman, we have found a considerable number of families are facing the need for shelter. The right to shelter is an integral human right, said Mr. Totozani. Prime Minister Rama has begun a two-day visit to Israel with a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister. The joint fight against violent extremism and the deepening of relations in the field of energy and water were the subject of the meeting. Prime Minister Rama had this to say, "We are very clear in our stance against terrorism and extreme acts of violence. We have recently established a regional center in Albania to prevent violent extremism, and we are determined to work together with you. Side by side with the people of Israel, we will defend our values and our people from the threat of terrorism and any other form of extremism in a country that is proud of harmony and religious coexistence. We are very happy to predict increased cooperation and trade together." The Israeli Prime Minister emphasized the friendship between the two nations and expressed his gratitude for the contribution of the Albanian people in rescuing Jews during World War II. He said, "We never forget our friends, and we appreciate the sense of humanity and civility and the courage you showed during our difficult time. It is a pleasure for me to expand our relations in many specific areas. Today, terrorism threatens us all. Israel fights against terrorism every day, and we are always on high alert. But I believe that people today understand more and more that the problems of international security are interlinked. The terrorist threat is against everyone. It is international, and therefore the answer should be proportionate." Mr. Rama's visit coincides with the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Albania and Israel. The meeting between the two prime ministers was concluded with the signing of two agreements in the field of health and a memorandum of understanding between the Ministries of Education and Sports to promote remembrance and education of the Holocaust. The U.S. State Department has issued a report today about the border demarcation between Kosovo and Montenegro, which was drafted by the Kosovo State Commission for Marking and Maintenance of State Borders. The report states that there is no problem whatsoever with the border demarcation between Montenegro and Kosovo. It reads, "We understand that the basis for the Commission's demarcation efforts was the 1974 Yugoslav Constitution, which defined Kosovo's border with the administrative borders of municipalities, which are broken into cadastral zones. This basis was also used in 2007 Comprehensive Settlement Proposal of the UN Special Envoy and the 2008 Constitution of the Republic of Kosovo. Following a review of the maps from 1940 to the present, including those used by the Commission that is currently demarcating the border, the U.S. State Department has determined that the border that was recently marked closely aligns with the border defined by the 1974 Constitution." The report continues, "The borders we have depicted since 2008 match the proposed border of 2015 in detail. We note that the conclusion of the border demarcation agreement is an EU condition for visa liberalization, and it represents an important step in Kosovo's path toward European integration. The agreement with Montenegro is being opposed by the Kosovo opposition, which says that the agreement diminishes Kosovo's borders." That concludes our news edition for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please join us again tomorrow at the same time for more translated news in English. Thanks, and have a great night.